So now we're going to solve equations, but we're going to start with something that you've seen before. Last year you solved these kinds of equations. To get rid of denominators, you're going to multiply through by the common denominator of 6, 3, and y. So you might not have had a y in the denominator last year, but it's the same process. So what's the common denominator? Well, the common denominator for 3 and 6 is 6. I don't know what y is. It could be 5, it could be 7, it could be 6. I don't know what it is, so I'm going to need to multiply by y. So 6y is going to be my common denominator. Now I'm going to write out that I'm going to multiply each term by 6y so that I don't forget to multiply every single term by 6y. Once I've got it written out, I'm just going to multiply my fractions. Remember, if you like to put a 1 in your denominator, if that helps you visually, go for it. Remember, you can reduce any numerator with any denominator. So my y's cancel out, and I've got 30. My 3 and my 6 reduce, and then I've got 2y times 2, which is 4y. My 6's reduce, and that gives me 5y. And then I just solve a regular, nice equation, and I get y is 30. I need to go back and look and make sure that it's not a restriction, which you remember from the last section of multiplying and dividing. So I look at the denominator. The only restriction on the denominator is 0. And since y is 30, that's not a restriction. That's my answer. Next kind of question. 3 denominators, no variables in the denominator. I look for that common denominator of 6, 8, and 12. And 24 is my common denominator. Again, I'm going to write out that I'm going to multiply everything by 24. And that's just so I don't leave one of them out, which is a common mistake. And then I'm going to multiply. You can stick those ones in the denominator if that's helpful. And then I'm going to do my reducing. In this first term, 8 and 24 reduced to 3 and 1. 12 and 24 reduced to 2. Do not forget to distribute. It's 2 times the entire numerator. That gives me 2w plus 6. And then I'm going to reduce my 6 and 24. And 4 times 5 gives me 20. And then I just solve my equation. 5w is 14. So w is 14/5. But it gets harder. To find the common denominator, I'm going to have to do that factoring just like you did when you were simplifying with multiplying and dividing to see if you can find the common denominator. And I know, like, let's just say that x was 5. This would be 5, this would be 8. So I would need to multiply 5 by 8 to get to a common denominator. So I'm going to have to multiply x by x plus 3. And if I look at this over here, I'm like, oh, wait, I already have x and x plus 3. I don't have to do anything else for that last denominator. So now I know my denominator, and I'm going to go ahead and again, I'm going to write it out. But I'm going to leave the denominator in factored form because it's easier to see what I can reduce. But I'm going to write it out for each piece so that I don't forget to do any reducing or multiplying. And now I'm going to do my reducing. Again, you can stick those ones under there if you like to. In that first term, everything disappears. In the second term, the x's disappear. But I'm going to write minus 6 times x plus 3, and I'm going to leave it like that so I don't forget to distribute that negative 6 all the way through. And you see like the 6 was on the right-hand side. I just like to see my coefficient in the front of my parentheses, so I moved it there. And the x plus 3's cross out in the last term, and that gives me an x squared. And then from here, I'm going to solve. 18 minus 6x minus 18 is x squared. And my 18's disappear. I'm going to add 6x. The only reason I'm going that direction, these disappeared, is because I like my x squared to be positive because it's just easier. And then I'm going to use my ZPP. And I get my two answers of 0 and negative 6, but I need to go make sure neither of them are restrictions. So I go all the way back to the beginning, and I see my restrictions would be 0 here and negative 3 here. And the same for this first one right here, 0 and -3. I go back and look at my answers. 0 is not an answer because it's a restriction. So my only answer is -6. So be sure you go back and do that last step. And then our last question. Denominators of 2 and x and 1. I'm going to multiply everything by 2x. 2x times x over 2. 2x times 4 over x. And 2x times 6. I know it might seem a little annoying to write it out, but I'm telling you it's beneficial. Less mistakes are made. You can stick that 1 if you want to. There's nothing to reduce. I get 2x squared. Here my x's do reduce. I get 8. And here I get 12x. I'm now going to make my life a little easier. So I've brought everything to one side. I'm going to divide by 2. Why? Because I can, and then it makes my life a little easier. Are there factors of 4 that will add or subtract to 6? There are not. So is it NRS? Hopefully you said no. You don't know yet. You need to do a little quadratic formula to see. Negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac. That's not going to be a negative number in there, so it is going to have an answer. 36 take away 16 is 20. And now I'm going to simplify my 20. That breaks up into 4 and 5. That gives me 2 root 5 over 2. And then my last step is to divide by 2, and I get 3 plus or minus root 5. Again, this stuff isn't that easy, but if you write out every step and go slowly, you should be good. Remember, you can watch this video multiple times if that is helpful. Good luck with the homework.